Okay, so I'll show you how to do a multi-screen importing and exporting kind of thing. You need to be really familiar with sequences. I'm going to just create a sequence by just clicking and dragging this into there. That's usually what people do to create a sequence. But what you need to be aware of is what it does is it creates this thing, which is a timeline. So this is this. See that little symbol? You might not see these if you're like maybe in one of these views, you could just click onto this view to see the symbols. You could see that it matched my frame rate and it matched my resolution. They're the same. It doesn't necessarily have to match though. So for instance, if you think about it, it's kind of like if you've got a picture frame and you've got a piece of paper, you can have a piece of paper that doesn't fit the picture frame and then a bit gets cropped out, or you can have a piece of paper that's a lot smaller and have multiple pieces of paper inside one picture frame, up to you. So this essentially is your picture frame, and these clips are your papers, your video files. So usually you'll just have one of these. Let me just delete and show you that you could also go File, New, Sequence, and then you could just match those numbers. 1080p 30 is probably accurate because it's 30 frames a second and it's HD. Boop. And then you could just drag this in. That's doing almost the exact same thing. Sometimes it'll say that the sequence settings don't match just right. I'm actually going to say, yeah, let's change the sequence to fit that. Like one little thing would have been a little bit different. Anyways, so let's say we want to do a split screen of 3 different screens. What I would do is I'd first figure out if I need to edit them all together as one piece, or if I'm happy to kind of work on them as 3 different projects kind of thing and then just have them on multiple screens. So for instance, I can have this and I can make it go, let's make this, skip this version. Let's make this a different color. Yep, that's my video suite. I can create some text and I could say screen 1. And then I could go, well, I want a second screen. Oh, so this is called sequence 1 now, because this is screen 1. I'm going to call this screen 1 just so I know. Screen 1. And then maybe you could say this is left or wherever screen 1 is. I don't know. You could duplicate this now, or you could just create a completely new sequence just like we did. So you could just go File, New, or just drag and drop this into this little icon, which will create a new sequence with that clip, just like we did at the beginning. Or you could duplicate the one that we've just created. You could right click and choose Duplicate, and you could say Screen 2. Let's say this is the middle screen. And then I'm still in screen 1 left, so I'll double click this. It opens up a new tab. Now I'm screen middle. They're very similar, so they look the same, but like if I were to maybe move this like over here, you'll see that they're different. And on this one, I might say screen 2. And instead, I might make this one green. So now I've got differences. Woo! And you can maybe have a third screen. Shortcuts, Command Shift backslash or slash, whichever one that is, the one with this question mark. And I'll call this screen 3 right. So now I've got my 3 screens. And you could, of course, do whatever kind of edits you want. It's not just changing the color, of course, but whatever. So now I've got these 3 different ones. Didn't change the text for that. You don't need to, but yeah. So that's what you could do, and then you could just export these 3. But if you want to see them side by side, what you could do is you can go File, New, Sequence, kind of like what we've talked. Now, go to Settings and choose Frame Size. So we don't want this one to be just normal HD sized. So remember how I said you kind of have to choose the size of your frame as well as your image. So our frame is the size of a TV, which is usually 1920 by 1080, which is HD. There are 4K TVs out there, so you might be working with 4K footage and planning to go with 4K TVs, but most of our TVs are HD, so I'm just going to set it as HD. But we've got 3 of these. So we actually want is, the height is fine as 1080, but this should be, let's see if I could just hit ×3, if that'll do the math for me. Yes, sweet. So I could just do that, and now that that's 3 screens, this should be 30 frames a second, just to match the other bits. All right, and let's call this one master, or viewer, or whatever you want to call it. Well, I'm just going to call it master. That's usually what I like to name things. All right, so now what we could do is, like, theoretically, you could have just created all of this in, let's say, so now I'm bringing in footage that's HD, but in a giant screen, and saying, hey, do you want me to change it back to HD? And I'm going to say, no, keep the existing stuff, because I actually really need this. Okay, great. So now there's my image, just one of my screens and my 3. So of course we could just bring in 3 different images. Use your, where are they? Use your position sliders and stuff. Put them on top of each other. You can absolutely do this like that. And you don't need to have done all this 3 sequence stuff. The 3 sequence stuff is just helpful if you've got lots of edits and cuts. So like if you've got 3 different movie files, you don't want to have to edit 3 different movies all in one timeline. That'd be pretty nuts. But we've already done that, so let's bring them in, all 3 of our sequences. No, keep the existing sizes. And I'm going to put them on top. I'm overwriting. Let me show you what you do that if you don't want to overwrite the audio. Boop. Boop. All right, +++ to zoom in. All right, so now the left one should be on the left. So this should be all the way here. That's about right. I feel like there's a slither of, maybe it should be 9, 6, 8. And you can zoom in if you're not sure. You could always go zoom in 400%. And of course you can try to remember the numbers. Oh, 960. There you go. So I was just looking at that line, and that should match up perfectly here. So that's screen 1, screen 3 right should be, let's go plus 960. A smarter person would know the exact numbers of what I'm trying to do. So 960 is the half of 1920. So that's, yeah, that's why the numbers are easy. But yeah, anyways, you just need to kind of think about it a little bit, which I don't have time for. All right. So there's my 3 screens, looking good. So now this is where you can view them all as one screen. And the benefit of doing this is not just for viewing it, it's really good for viewing, yes, but it's also good because now you can literally edit stuff side to side. So you can have things moving from one screen. So I can have let's bring in another shot of the clouds. And this one, I'll make it smaller. And this one I'm just going to animate going from side to side, so it's going to pass through. Now, if you're going to be doing any kind of passing through and stuff, you should be thinking about bezels, like how much bezel, like how much gap should you have here, because your TV isn't going to go straight from one side to the other. There is going to be a little bit of that bezel thing, so you could decide to factor that in or not to factor that in. It's up to you. So what you would do if you want to factor it in is you just have it, instead of this being 3 times 1920 by 1920, you would just make it a little bit larger depending on how much. So whatever this width, you would just make it a little bit larger and then just leave gaps between these videos. Yeah, anyways, that way when you see an image here, and if there's actually in the physical world a space between them, you'd see that space. So technically it will crop a little bit of the passing through, but it's probably a good thing. But I won't worry about that. So let's animate it. I'm just going to set a keyframe here, bring that to the beginning, and then keyframe there, and bring this to the end. So now we've got this thing that's moving like that. And now it's crossing between screen to screen. Great. So now what you could do, now if you weren't doing anything that's going crossing screen to screen and you were aware of all the timing and stuff, you could just export these three and then you're done. But because we did do stuff in this master that is not available in these three, what we're going to do is we are going to do some cropping. So the way you could do that is you can go to File, Export, and Media. It'll take you to this window. And then you could go Send to Media Encoder. So that'll send it to Media Encoder, which is this software. It might take a while for it to load up. I already had it loaded up. And then what you want to do is choose your exporting settings, of course. So you want so I'm going to choose H.264. This is completely up to you, but I'm going to choose adaptive low bitrate just because it's going to be smallish. And then you want to click on here. And this is where you can start cropping. I think by default you're in output, but you might want to click on source. And then you can click on this button, which will let you crop the video. Now I'm going to tell it this is 16 by 9. You don't have to. You could just tell it where to crop. So you could say, whoops, let's undo that. It's not letting me. You could just kind of come here and type in that line. So remember how we were doing the math numbers? That's where these numbers can come in handy. I think 3800 was, no, damn it. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell it 69 because I know it's 16 by 9. And then boom, that's going to be, oh, actually I should have, all right, whatever. So I moved it all the way to the side now. And I can go, what do I want to call this? I'm going to say, call this S1 left. And hit OK. And you're just going to do the exact same for the others. So I'm just going to hit Shift Command D for duplicate, or you can right click and go duplicate a couple of times. So you've got two of them. Click on Custom, move this all the way to the right, I'd call this. Let's call this S3 right. And then this one I want it to be in the exact middle. And again, I'm not the greatest with memorizing. Oh, 1920, that sounds about right. But if not, what I also could have done is I noticed that when I changed this to 16 by 9, it snaps to the middle. So that would have been a handy way to get it snapping. And then S2 middle. Okay. One thing I forgot actually is if you go back, we need to tell it to just export just this bit. Now the way we do that is we can hover over here and we can see that it's 1920 by 1080. It's 1921. I'm not too sure why it's 1921 since let's maybe change that to 16 by 9. Bring it back all the way here. Yeah, 16 by 9 is not 1921. But so yeah, I'm going to tell it to ignore one of those. Here, this is what it's exporting. We're going to turn this off and say, actually, we want it to be 1920 by 1080. That's not going to work. 1080. Let's turn off this constraint, and now we could type in 1920 by 1080. And that's what's actually going to do the cropping. This is going to tell it where. So let's go back and do that for all three. So this one is nope, nope, and 1920. Okay. And this one is nope, I don't want it to be that large. 1920 by 1080. And okay. And let's play that, see how that goes. Okay, so let's see how that went. Yeah, looks good. So that's going to go through. And this one, we can't see the bit, and it's going to eventually come through. There it is. That's screen 2 and screen 3. It's not going to come through until the very end. Yeah, there you go. That's how you can work on multiple screens.